Hello, and welcome to Joy and Gratitude. I am Neo Cairo,
And I'm Beth Mercurio.
and we are here to exhale into a new week. And Beth, what exciting stuff happened last week and that you want to share with us?
Yeah, amazing. I think I love your choice of the word exhale. I love the fact that we never know what we're going to talk about, but that feels really beautifully appropriate. I love the idea of the fact that it's a new week and we get to choose kind of whenever we get to reset and how to decide like all right, whatever happened last week was last week and what does this week look like and our ability to reframe. So I had a really challenging week last week where my daughter was health was really an issue for her and we ended up in the hospital and I think that it taught me so much about myself. And we've talked about this before, but it still feels so relevant that in order to extend to others, you have to take care of yourself first, because otherwise you can show up, I think, I guess when you show up depleted or from a place of inauthenticity, there can be an edge to it. And I think like I really worked hard to make sure that I took care of myself so that I could be fully present with my daughter for everything she had to go through as the person that was, really in pain and discomfort and fear and all the things associated with being in a hospital, right? And she's only 18. So that was really scary for her. But I did the things I needed to first. And so I went out and got in the woods really early with my dog and made sure that I spent some time kind of centering myself and thinking about what I'm grateful for, knowing that the day was going to have a bunch of different things thrown at me. And it allowed me to stay sort of calm and show up as the caregiver I wanted to be, instead of bouncing and sort of being reactive to all the things. And I think the only other thing I'll say was it was an incredible week of being in practice, because we say we're lifelong learners, right? We never stop that practice of creating boundaries and holding boundaries for myself. So when people were like, we really want to come say hi, can we come visit? No. And I finally was like, no, like that doesn't work. I can't, even though the request to visit was came from a place of like them wanting to help, like that wasn't helpful because I was so tired that even having to be in conversation was hard. I just needed to rest when we could rest. And so I had to practice that. And it was really lovely to be in the practice of saying no and um, saying it in a kind way, not being upset that they asked, because the ask to come visit came from a really loving place. And so instead of being like, why are they even asking to come over? That was like an old message I probably would have had. Like, why would you ask me to visit? Like, do you understand what I'm going through? And instead, I'm like, of course they want to visit because like they love us and they want to give us their love. And so, but that I was able to say like, that's a beautiful request. And let me get back to you when we have more energy and we can do that and feel that love in a different way. But thank you and all those things. So I guess for me, it was a week of practicing boundaries and practicing resourcing myself so that I could extend to others. And now I'm really excited that I'm going to keep leaning into those tools. And I'm excited for this week where I'm not in crisis mode anymore. And still some worry, still some fear, but sort of how to manage that is also something maybe we can talk about because it's hard. I'm like, all right, okay, I still have uncertainty, so how to live in the uncertainty. But it's nice to be out of the crisis mode, and I'm doing a lot of reflecting around, what I went through and what I'm excited about, and a lot of it is what I just shared. It's that I created some boundaries to hold the space that I needed to show up as my best self and the best mother that I could be, during a time where my daughter really needed me.
That word keeps coming up, and I'm sorry that first I want to
Mm.
definitely extend uh, my care for you and your daughter through a very difficult time. But the word boundaries is one that I think we've talked about in every single one of our podcasts because it's such a powerful word and it's something that we so easily give up because we're taught to give it up. We're taught
Mhm.
not to have it. We're taught to live in the norms that have been set for us. But one thing that came to mind is as you were speaking is that we often think that we should, and that's a dangerous word, do certain things to please others, should do what is expected based on what we think others expect. But imagine if we reframe that to I could. I could have people over, but I know that it's not a fit for me now. Let it be your choice how you handle your caregiving. And caregivers, oh my, caregivers, you need the choice. You need to put could and reframe situations into your choice because that's truly the way that we set our boundaries is when we exercise choice. And caregivers are usually forgotten in the plight of illness. Caregivers keep going against all odds. But reality is they need to also pause and they need to ask for help. They need to be able to say, hey, I need you to step in the gap because I need to get some sleep.
Mm.
I need you, loving person that wants to come visit, to maybe send a DoorDash because I didn't even get a chance to take a shower today.
Yeah.
And heaven forbid I try to cook. We need to love those that are ill, but we need to love those that daily give fully to them without asking for anything, without doing anything but giving out of their heart. And caregivers come in so many different ways. As parents, it's funny. Someone yesterday, I was talking to a friend, and she said, I have PTSD of being a mother. And I said to her, wow, that's deep. And she says, because the giving never stops.
Mm.
And I literally had to pause. And she says, nobody's ever saying thank you. Nobody's ever grateful. Nobody's ever anything but expecting. And that is true for mothers and fathers. They're fathers that are the main role in the household. And why don't we know boundaries? We don't know boundaries
Mm.
because all we know is the expectation to give. So I say to you out there, because we are all in different stages of our lives, whether you are giving because you are a parent, whether you are giving because you are caring for a parent, whether you are giving because it's in your nature to extend yourselves to others, before you give, identify what is your breaking point and look at the triggers and then stop and ask for help.
Yeah, it's beautiful, Neil. There's a few things you said that I'd love to kind of add to or have people consider. And this idea of should and could, I love that. And I will say to you, when I work with people on boundaries, a lot of people don't know what their boundaries are.
Mhm.
They literally are like, "Well, I don't know what is it. I don't want to have boundaries. Do I want to?" Right? They get a little uncomfortable even in the conversation around boundaries, right? And so I think for me, and this hopefully could be like a little tip for people potentially out there that struggle with identifying where the boundary is, The minute I feel a should is now for me a moment to pause. So it's like the minute I am like, I should really allow it was my parents who are the most loving, caring, amazing people. But like I had to say, no, like I know you are worried about me, your daughter, right? Parent. They're like worried about how I'm doing as a caregiver and they're worried
Mhm.
about their granddaughter. And of course, laying eyes on us would have made them probably feel really good. But like, when you said the shower, I'm like, oh my gosh, like literally that's where I was at. I'd been in the hospital for days. I hadn't changed out of the same clothes. Like, I was like, no way. Right. So, but that should moment now is the moment I go, oh, that's a boundary issue. You are about to say yes to something that your whole body does not want to do. There's not one part of you that will find that helpful right now based on what you're experiencing. So, similar to you, I now go the minute I feel a should, and I know what it feels like because it kind of rips me up inside a little bit where I'm like, I should do it, but I don't really want to do it. And what do I do about we each know what that feels like inside of us internally, right? When we're conflicted because like you said, we've got this expectation, this norm on how we should behave, but our body is like, I don't want to do that. So that moment that you feel that conflict, that constriction in your body, going to the coulds is exactly what I do because a could isn't one thing. A could is a possibility. A could is like there's a whole bunch of answers. And I think that for me, the power in possibility is what enables me to say no more. Because I go, well, wait a minute. I don't have to just be like, no, that doesn't work for me. In the past, I told you I would be edgy, right? I'd be edgy in my response for them not to come over. Well, now I'm like, well, what's possible? Like, what would feel good? Can I say, like, tonight doesn't work, but let's touch base tomorrow? It might be really lovely to have coffee. We might be feeling better. Like, just adding to it what's possible enables me to be able to make a decline in a way that feels really authentic and addresses the fact that their request is coming out of love and there's nothing wrong with their request. It's just not working for me. And I love this idea of knowing when. So if you don't know what that boundary feels like, practice a little bit identifying that moment where you watch yourself in a should. And then, as you said, take some time to pause and go, what are the other options I have here? What could I possibly do that will feel good and will feel true to myself, but also acknowledge the other people that are trying to do something beautiful? That was one thing. And the second thing around this caregiving piece, uh, one of the things I loved is you're right. Like a lot of times that the people are always asking about the person who is sick or unhealthy in whatever way that is, right? There's so many forms of wellness, right? We know that physical, mental, many varieties. But you're right, the other person that sometimes doesn't get seen and can be invisible in those moments is the person who's caring for that and carrying so much of the burden of what's happening. And I will say that the beautiful thing that happened for me was the people that once you know that, whether you've been a caregiver or you've somehow like been in that environment, then you know it and then you go to the caregiver. And I will say I had the gift of people like yourself as one of those beautiful people who just did something. Because I think the hard part is people want to help and they don't know how. So, again, you were saying asking for help is so critical for the caregiver. Like, what would be the most helpful thing? And sometimes I think you just don't even know what the answer is.
Yeah.
So, I had a lot of beautiful people in my community say, like, how can I help? And I'm just like, I don't know. Like, I don't even know how to answer that. So, I think there is this other beautiful nuance of even someone saying, "How are you doing?" Like, not "How is your daughter Annie doing?" "How are you doing?" Like, an acknowledgement that, like, this is hard on me as a parent, the worry, the fear, the physical, like, wanting to hold and be there, all those things. Just that acknowledgement that made me feel cared for, and then I think the people that know just do. So, like, just ship a beautiful gift, right? Just have a meal delivered. The stuff that I don't even know that I need, but then it comes and I go, oh, like this is so beautiful and I feel so held and cared for. So sometimes I think we all get worried about like, will they want it? Won't they want it? Is it the right thing? And I think if you just do sometimes, asking is beautiful. And if we as caregivers can say what we need, and I did say to a friend, like, I need a hug. Can you come over and just hold me? And like that was big for me to identify that I needed that physical embrace. My husband was away. That was why he was traveling. And I didn't have that kind of
Yeah.
support. And I just needed a physical hold. So I did ask for that. And that was beautiful. But other things, I just didn't know what I needed. And I think it was really lovely to have people just kind of show up. And so I think there's a couple of things that can help us in this space of caregiving in particular, which is as a caregiver, if you know what you need, beautiful, ask for it. And so many people want to help. That's what you know. The community around you is looking for something to do. And then as the person who maybe asks, what can I do? And you don't get like a really specific thing that you can do, I love the idea of just doing something. And
Mhm.
it's okay if it's wrong because it's coming out of love. If it's a drop off or like you said, a DoorDash or a meal or a flower, like something that just says, I'm here and I see you, even though you don't know what you need. I think there's so much beauty in that.
Yeah, that's what's so important is human beings need to be acknowledged. The number one thing, whether you are in a relationship, whether it's a personal relationship or a business relationship, the number one thing that destroys relationships is lack of acknowledgement, being
Mm,
seen. And when we are present for someone else and just hold the space with them, that is the biggest gift that we can give someone. Um, that caregiver is in for a long haul because it's not just the episode, it's aftermath of the episode. It's the maintenance, it's the diet, it's the making sure that we prevent another episode. So we have to be that village and be the
mm,
village that is working for each other at all times. And just checking in, just holding space. Sometimes just quiet, listening. Another piece that I think is so important, and I guess to me it's a little bit different. I have been so ill throughout my life that I can reflect on how it feels to be in both sides of the coin. I've been a
mm,
caregiver and I have been the ill person. But one thing, actually two things, that make things better is a joke
mm,
and making that person laugh because that releases those endorphins. That releases that person's viability to just be human again in their totality. And the other is music,
mm.
because music lets that person scream at their lungs through their pain or rejoice and dance. So let's make sure that we just bring some fun into the caregiver space because they already have enough conversation. They already have enough things to do. But let's let them smile again. Let's let them listen to their favorite genre and have their moment. We all have that song that takes us back, that when you listen
So
to it,
good.
and I won't say what mine is because people will laugh, but it's
Oh,
a
come on,
certain.
tell
Oh,
us.
no, 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 no. No, that's not happening. Maybe at another time. But
All
when I
right, all
listen to
right.
it, immediately, ooh, I start dancing, and
I love
all
that.
the pain kinda disappears, and
It's
that's it.
Well, it's funny because I feel like I have 2 things going on. I have the yes, so just I'm a crazy Broadway musical fanatic, and so that's what I did. I was, like, listening to Broadway music a ton, but I also find I wonder if you do or others do, that when I'm struggling or sad, or I would say the way I felt for the week was like I was bracing, right? Like I felt like every bone and like every muscle in my body was bracing for the uncertainty, for like what was coming next. And so in that mode, I didn't like process. And so sometimes I choose music that's like sad or that like gets me to a place where I can actually release. So it's not always fun. And
Mhm.
so when you were talking earlier, the song for me is this song by Laurie McKenna called A Mother Never Rests.
Mm.
And it goes to what your friend was saying about having trauma from motherhood, right? Like that you just literally never rest. Like you are always, and again, it's not just a mother. I think a father in the same circumstance, right? But a parent, it should just let's call it a parent never rests. But this particular song is called A Mother Never Rests, and I played it just to be like, I wouldn't change a thing about how I showed up. I wanted to be fully present. I wouldn't change how I've mothered, but it's still really hard to be on all the time, right? And to just like feel what they're feeling and try to be there for them in that way. So I laugh because I used music in a couple ways. One, yes, the lively part of that gets me dancing and moving and just love a lot. So many Broadway musicals I can't even, and like Seasons of Love, I played a bunch
Mhm.
in the last few days, right? So things like that I love, but I did also choose the song to allow me to release. And that song was like so beautiful. And then I was able to just kind of cry. And that was the thing I was going to say to you too when you said it's ongoing. And after the episode or the crisis or the moment, it's so true, and I think when I we talked about exhaling this week and what was ahead, for me, I'm really working on I say a lot grace and space, right? To give myself grace to know that like I still have not fully processed the crisis, right? And I feel like I don't want to be vague to the audience. Like just to be clear, my daughter had kidney stones and it was just incredibly hard to watch her be in so much pain and you know be in a hospital multiple times just because of the situation. So I just say that because sometimes it's hard when there's so much vagueness around what it was. So the good news is she's going to be okay. And I know there are people that have much harder circumstances, right? But I will say, it still hasn't passed. I'm still in a little bit braced, and I know I haven't processed all that was happening and the fear and everything, and allowing myself to take the time this week to know that it might come in really weird forms. Like I might like cry, I might get stressed, I might be like, when my phone rings now, it feels different. I'm like, is she okay? Like, is she calling me from South Carolina with something else that's wrong? Right. So I'm still a little bit like, you know,
Guarded.
I've got that brace a little.
You're
Yeah, I'm
guarded.
guarded,
You're
right?
guarded.
I'm guarded. And I wanna be able to be like, "And that's okay." So it's like, right, it didn't just end. I don't need to be like, "That's like the old part. I gotta be perfect achiever. I'm back. No worries. That happened. I'm good. It's all behind me." Like, no, that's like that robotic part. No. It's gonna be in waves. I'm gonna have good moments, bad moments. I'm still gonna be checking. And I did ask her, talk about grace in space. I had a conversation with her where we checked in and I was like, I need you to know that I'm gonna be like what you'll consider a nag this week because I'm still worried because we were attached at the hip and I knew what you were drinking and what like everything that was happening in your life. And now you're gone and I'm not comfortable yet. I'm still wondering if you're drinking enough and taking care of your body and are you going to be okay? And I'm worried. And so I had to say to her, like, just give me a little time to sort of like be the mom who's really on you, and I think there was something beautiful about that because I gave her the heads up. Like, this is me being worried and it might not feel good, but just give me a little time and then I will get back to a place where I respect that you don't need me asking you all these questions. It's coming from a place of fear and I'm still recovering. So I was able to say it out loud. And I think that helped. So that grace and space of knowing it does take time and it bleeds into different parts of your life is really important and so relevant to the conversation.
No, absolutely, and the thing about it, and people forget this, if you do not deal with the trauma and you just focus on doing what you have to do, to get things done in life, to care for that person, to care for your home, for your job, for your children. You are literally becoming a prisoner to the trauma, and you have to let go. You have to
Mhm.
understand that you must give yourself the grace. You must give yourself the space. You must grieve. You must continue to understand it so you can move in flow forward. And that is what we do is we are helping you move from trauma to joy, gratitude, and flow. See you next time.